What about you guys? Any interest in expanding MSF?
You'd better believe it. I want to make us into an organization that doesn't take orders from any country. Just like you were saying, we have to be strong. Strong enough to defend ourselves. We need money, too. Money to train soldiers to fight. The way I see it, we make MSF into something along the lines of a new kind of business. A contractor providing the full range of military services. Not just combat, but logistics, training, weapons, outfitting, and R&D. Combining the small footprint and exceptional performance of special forces with the raw military might of a full regular army. Only with that kind of power can we break free of nation-states. What I need from you, boss, is to go out and find guys we can bring back here using Fulton Recovery. Then tell us what assignment to use them for. I'll take care of the rest. Your old mentor, the boss. She was known in the West as the mother of special forces, right?
Nothing but propaganda.
Actually, it's not all that far from the truth. I heard the KGB just set up a counter-sabotage cell. Alpha Group, I think they call it. There's even a rumor that West Germany created a counter-terrorist unit within its border police after the debacle at the Munich Olympics. Back home in the States, they've got the illustrious Green Berets, the SEALs, and your personal creation, Foxhound. The seeds sown by the boss are beginning to sprout. Same goes for MSF, right? In creating it, you were carrying on the will of the boss.
Yeah. She taught me how to fight the hard way. She beat it into me.
And now, thanks to her, we can take on missions other than just conventional combat. After all, we've got the same mother as the Army's Special Forces. You know, Snake, you're right. As long as we're soldiers without borders, we're going to be a target. We need our own deterrent.
Yeah, we're going to be stepping into a lot of different conflicts as we roam the world, each one unique, and with its own set of geography, ideologies, and politics. If we're going to intervene in those kinds of situations, we need the threat of a Metal Gear.
Unless we want to end up like Che Guevara did in Bolivia.
Well said. Our army without borders doesn't have a land to call home. We're nomads, wanderers. What we need now is a sheepdog to guard our flock.
Right.
Maybe it's not the way the boss would have gone about it, but there are places in this world that need us, and soldiers that need MSF. And as long as we're needed, we'll keep on moving. Ours is a journey that never ends. We're the real Peace Walkers.
Costa Rica isn't alone. All of Latin America is getting swept up in the superpowers' Cold War. The whole ideological split between East and West. In the end, it's just a greedy scramble for wealth by the ruling classes. The Western bourgeois stand to lose everything if their countries go communist. After all, the communists want to abolish private property altogether. So the capitalist rulers desperately tried to halt the global spread of communism. Hence the phenomenon of red baiting. And the communists, for their part, didn't exactly stay true to their principles. They tried to escape class-based society, but between Stalin's autocracy and the rise of the nomenclatura, they ended up creating one anyway. Once people have power, they stop caring about equality. That's where communism, where society in general reaches its limits. The rulers only care about their own gain. The opposing side becomes a risk factor that threatens the profit, and thus the ongoing struggle between capitalism and communism was born.
And now, nuclear deterrence is part of the picture.
Exactly. They say nuclear weapons are the reason we haven't seen conflict on a global scale since World War II. The thought that your opponent might launch nukes against you sort of makes it tough to start an armed conflict, especially now that they've got intercontinental ballistic missiles. Nowhere is safe.
Of course, all that has caused military expenditures to skyrocket.
Well, the only way to ward off a preemptive strike is to flaunt your own nuclear stockpile. And that's caused their numbers to increase exponentially, not just with regards to destructive power, but in terms of targeting technology too. Now they can hit a target halfway across the world with pinpoint accuracy. In a way, the space race was a demonstration of that technological progress.
And as a result of all that, We now have mutually assured destruction.
It's the ultimate form of deterrence. No one's going to launch their nukes knowing they'll be obliterated in return.
I don't know. The chance of somebody hitting the button by mistake is never zero.
You're right. Even with peace guaranteed by MAD, there's always the risk of an accident.
Nobody wants the world to end on account of some machines malfunctioning.
On the other hand, thanks to deterrence, we haven't had a world war since 1945. You gotta admit, it has been pretty peaceful.
Not that it matters to us.
People point at the nuclear arms and space races and call it a Cold War. I say if they're not shooting at each other, why not call it world peace?
Doesn't mean war is gone. Look at Korea. Look at Vietnam.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking in relative terms here. Besides, if war died out completely, we'd be SOL.
We're not warmongers.
And yet, we can't survive in a world that's at peace.
You got a point.
So it's been more than 10 years since the Cuban Missile Crisis, huh?
I don't think we'll ever forget it.
No kidding. Those 13 days starting October 15th, 1962, were probably the closest we ever came to all-out nuclear war. The Russians deployed nuclear missiles to Cuba. America responded with a naval blockade. Then Russia shot down an American spy plane. I was still a teenager back then, but I remember what it felt like to be one step away from nuclear war. The adults were freaking out.
If it wasn't for the Cuban Missile Crisis, there might never have been an Operation Snake Eater. And
what's the matter, Snake? It's not like you to get all hypothetical.
I guess not. It was the reassessment after the missile crisis that paved the way for the hotline between Moscow and Washington, and also for détente. That's irony for you.
The Treaty of Tlatelolco was enacted to make Latin America into a nuclear-free zone. It bans the testing, use, manufacture, production, acquisition, storage, and deployment of nuclear weapons. The impetus was pretty obvious. The series of crises triggered by the deployment of nukes in Cuba.
Not hard to imagine. Those 13 days had the whole world frozen in fear.
Of course, the country that started it all, Cuba, hasn't actually ratified it yet.
Still, the treaty's backed by over 20 countries. Anyone flouting it risks becoming an international pariah.
True. Opinol would investigate, no doubt. I heard they used Japan's 3 non-nuclear principles as their model when they drew up the treaty. I think the Treaty of Tlatelolco might have been their way of asking nuclear powers not to use nukes against them. That's the biggest difference between the treaty and the 3 principles. I guess you could call it a 4th principle.
So Costa Rica abolished its army back in, what, 1949? Pretty gutsy move for a Central American nation at the time.
Yeah, well, they'd just come out of a civil war. I'm sure they were driven by a desire to avoid another tragedy like Paz said. But I think they had a more compelling reason. Army coup d'etat are a way of life in so many Latin American countries. Imagine seeing that up close.
No army, no coup. Makes sense.
Plus their economy was in ruins. So they honestly didn't have any money to spend on an army anyway.
Yeah, but weren't they on less than friendly terms with Nicaragua?
Yeah, and in fact Nicaragua did end up invading. But the Civil Guard fought back and the OAS brokered a ceasefire. The US and the rest of the OAS had their back, and they used it to full advantage. For a quarter century they survived in the powder keg of Central America. That must have taken some serious diplomacy. Even if the Civil Guard is pretty decked out for a police force.
Must be tough to be a country without an army.
Hey Snake, mind if I ask you something?
Since when did you start asking permission?
So, you used to be part of a CIA paramilitary unit, right?
That's right.
Ever do any ops in Central America?
No, not personally. But there were other units who did all kinds of stuff.
I remember the Bay of Pigs invasion back in '61. The papers had a field day with it.
Operation Zapata. That was the CIA code name. The whole thing went south.
Then there was Che Guevara, being hunted down in Bolivia. I heard the CIA had a hand in that too.
There were several units similar to mine. MSP, SOG. They'd recruit former special forces, train them as intelligence agents, and send them on deniable covert paramilitary operations. One of those units trained the Bolivian army in counter-guerrilla tactics.
And then had them shoot El Che.
So the story goes.
Around here they say La CIA instead of CIA, huh?
Nothing strange about it. That's how it's pronounced when you read it in Spanish.
It has the feminine noun ending a, so they use the article la. Apparently some people have taken to using the term UCLA.
That's a new one to me. What's it mean?
It stands for Unilaterally Controlled Latino Assets.
Meaning they're local agents?
Yeah, that's the idea. Washington uses them like pawns. Nobody knows who they really are or what they're doing. Can you believe the CIA and KGB were actually in cahoots?
Never thought I'd see that at the station chief level. But I'd heard stories of operatives in the field being on friendly terms.
Seriously?
Most espionage takes place in political hotspots, as you'd expect. But there aren't that many of those kinds of places, especially in a small country. Hang around long enough, and you're bound to run into fellow spies. Like it or not. You start saying hello, and soon enough you're eating dinner together.
Strange bedfellows, huh?
Well, I don't know about that. At any rate, this kind of fiasco is what happens when spies get too familiar. Hard to believe, but some people will betray anyone and anything if it suits their interests.
The strength of human is in its appeal to human emotions, but its weakness is in its susceptibility to those same emotions. That's why the tide in the intelligence world is shifting towards SIGINT, a network of cold, digital data, where feelings are irrelevant. Snake, you got a sec?
What's up?
Prime Minister Gary of Grenada is asking the UN to set up an agency to study the UFO problem.
Grenada? That island in the Caribbean?
He gave the press a bunch of photos. Says they prove the existence of UFOs. One of them caught my eye.
That's the...
Yep. The weapon Huey called the Chrysalis.
Cuz, this is the photo I gave to Chico. He said something about selling it off as a photo of a UFO.
Looks like it found its way into the pages of a magazine.
But why would the Prime Minister of a country believe tabloid trash like that?
There's been reports all over the Americas of abductions and cattle mutilations lately.
You think that's true?
I think the CIA might be involved.
If they are, then Gary could be.
I know. If he digs too deep, he's gonna get himself into trouble.
But Grenada's right next door to Cuba.
I guess that would make it tough for the CIA to intervene, in a sense.
Upsetting the domestic balance of power could cause it to go red all of a sudden.
True. Well, in any case, it's not like we can do anything about it. Just wanted to let you know.
Gotcha. I'll be careful not to let any more photos leak.
So I hear Amanda mistook you for Che Guevara, Snake. That's not too bad, huh?
Yeah, right. I'm not even worthy of polishing his boots.
Don't be so modest. From where I'm standing, your men see you as a great man.
As great as the century's most complete human being.
That's Sartre, right? Well, there's hardly been a more iconic figure of his times than Che.
Oh, he was more than that. He was a true revolutionary and a great warrior.
I'm with you there. Can you believe that when he first went to Cuba with Fidel, they had only 12 guys with them?
But they rallied. They brought in new recruits, won the support of the peasants, expanded their organization.
And in the end, they overthrew the Batista regime.
People flocked to them because they were honest. They won because they were strong. Those are the qualities that make men great.
You know, we're kind of in the same boat they were back then. Here we are, a handful of mercenaries taking on an army backed by the United States.
Yeah, we've got a long way to go.
But we've got to keep on going. It's not just about winning in battle. You need to think about recruiting people and growing this operation.
Got it.